Next and bigger challenge is to unify the economies too. Now, I'm not talking about like a sword you have in World of Warcraft should work in Fortnite. Every game,
Yeah.
every game's going to have its own gameplay rules, and a lot of games are going to have stuff that only works in them. But there's a huge set of games that have in common the idea of a cosmetic system that does not affect gameplay outcomes, but is purely cool looks and cool appearances. Um, Most of the major multiplayer games have them. And, if you look at games, you could probably bundle together about 70% of them and say they're similar enough that they could actually interoperate. That you could own an outfit in Fortnite, own an outfit in Roblox, and own the same outfit in maybe Call of Duty, and maybe, 100 or 200 other games, and actually expect they would work together. And you find other kinds of items are probably interoperable too. Like Fortnite has car outfits, so you can you know, buy different appearances of a car. And when you find a physical car in the world of Fortnite, if you're the first person to get into it in that session,
Mhm.
boom, it takes on your chosen car cosmetic. And now you have a cool car that's identifiable as yours. You know, we realized early on with Fortnite that the key to making Fortnite work as a creator economy was to open up the revenue from the item shop to all of those sources of engagement, right?
Mhm.
There are two big things happening in Fortnite that make it work as a product and as a business. One is the game modes, Fortnite Battle Royale, and all of the user modes and everything else are sources of engagement. People play there because it's super fun. And because they're playing there, they're willing to buy cool stuff to make their character look cooler. Um, and so you have all of these sources of engagement, but the sources of engagement don't make money directly. You can't spend money in Fortnite Battle Royale to buy a game item. Like everything's, the gameplay is not pay to win and it's all just a game. So we make money from the item shop. And the item shop only exists because of the sources of engagement. If you weren't playing Battle Royale, trust me, nobody would want to buy a Fortnite outfit.
Mhm.
If you weren't playing any Fortnite games, why would you buy Fortnite outfits?
Mhm.
And so you have all of the revenue in this item shop economy and all of the engagement in this engagement economy. And the thing that magically makes the Fortnite creator economy works is revenue sharing, item shop spending according to sources of engagement by engagement. If you buy an item and you've played, 40% of your time in Battle Royale and 60% of your time in these user modes, the money you spent, the portion of that that's profit can be separated out and paid out to all the different creators who participate in that economy. And that's why Fortnite scaled up to a $400 million creator economy so far and is growing.
It's amazing.
One of the really critical things we aim to do in designing that is ensure it's a creator economy that could scale to other companies, other ecosystems and say, right now we have many industry standards bodies. So one standardized game ratings, age ratings of games. Another standardized file formats for the web. Another standardizing file formats for 3D, like Chronos groups in the Metaverse Standards Forum. If we had a standards body standardize what are portable outfits in games, game outfits that you could buy in one game that work in another, what are their dimensions and what are their capabilities and what can you do and what can't you do and so on. Um, then you could have an item economy where every game agrees to respect each other's item purchases of that sort, and revenue is shared between ecosystems as well.
That would be incredible. That would be
Yeah.
so amazing. Is there, first of all, just it seems silly, maybe for people who don't play video games, but an outfit is an important. If an outfit can be persistent across video games, I mean, I don't know what's the purpose of life. Like, why do we wear clothing? Clothing is a part of our identity. It's how we present ourselves to the world. I wear this stupid suit and tie. It feels good. It feels good when I put it on. And even like the other outfit, I have two outfits, this and then a black t-shirt and jeans. And it feels good to wear that. It feels like me when I look in the mirror. Okay, I know that guy. And to be able to have that outfit go from game to game to game, maybe across the years, that would be wonderful. The I wonder if you could just even comment, could there also be another standardization about the value? So for more complicated items, so take a sword from Diablo and transfer it to a gun in Fortnite, but based on the value, some generic concept of money. So the value of a thing in one game versus the value of a thing in another game, where you're almost operating in this in the space of value versus the actual items, or is that already getting too general?
I think this can be done. Yeah, we did a lot of analysis of the Fortnite economy and found that some Fortnite experiences lead to or correlate with higher spending than others. And Battle Royale uh, is relatively strong in that area because you see your character from behind and see all of your other characters from the front, and you have lots of opportunities to really see who you are and to emote and to interact with other players. Um, and a lot of games have that characteristic. One funny anomaly stood out. There was this game that was one of the big breakthroughs in Fortnite, Only Up.
Mhm.
It's a game where you're just climbing up and up by following paths of stacks of objects and things. It was just stupid fun. Everybody loved.
Okay.
But we found people weren't spending a lot of money uh, on outfits when they were playing Only Up, and
Mm.
well, it's kind of intuitive actually. Like you're not seeing other players. Like if you see anything, like you're seeing their butt as
Mhm.
you're like trying to catch up to them, jumping from object to object, and they're above you. Um, and so it wasn't a mode that showed off outfits very much, but you could you can determine the economic correlation between a game mode and spending.
That's so fascinating. I mean, Fortnite is this gigantic economy where you could do those kinds of studies. You can understand markets, the digital markets as they emerge amongst humans and what they value. And from that value, you can probably have a very stable kind of money that emerges.
Yeah, I think so. You don't need like an alternate currency system. Unfortunately, a bunch of ideas have been conflated because people are trying to hype up different things. But this idea of large scale multiplayer social gaming, that notion of the metaverse, there's 600 to 800 million people playing that kind of game every month. So like that's real and that's happening and it's very much underway. Uh, VR has a much smaller audience. I don't think you need VR to have anything like this. Like VR is hardware that may or may not enhance the experience for some usage cases. For some, it will probably be better, and for some, it will probably be worse. But certainly, there's not any set of battle royale players flocking to VR. And the other thing is NFT is it's like you know trying to equate digital or cryptocurrency to the metaverse. It's like well it's just a way of, denoting money or value exchange. You can do that with money, or you can do it with NFTs or whatever, but there's nothing about this future digital economy that fundamentally requires cryptocurrency or whatever. What you need is interoperability. Interoperability can happen through a blockchain, it can happen through a database, it can happen through standards bodies with defining standards and protocols, and we've been doing it for hundreds of years since the railroads were standardized. And it's not something that totally requires a novel technological solution.
Yeah. I mean, even on the topic of cryptocurrency, it's very frustrating. Blockchain and crypto is a really powerful technology that I think can enable a lot of the things that we're talking about, but so many people use it to try to to try to make money, to create these bubbles and the hype and the meme coins and the so on and so forth that becomes much less about that drifts far away and rapidly from things that are actually of value, which is the experience of playing Fortnite and how you look when you play Battle Royale. I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say, but it's true. That's valuable. That's like, you have like gold in the physical space. We know that holds value. How your outfit looks like in Fortnite, that as you're saying, provably holds value. And so you want to connect like a standard uh definition of money value to that and not let it become this hype thing, which NFTs that you mentioned are just become that. It quickly drifts away into the land of people trying to buy and sell and trying to make money versus like staying close to the thing that people actually value. Forget the money. It's more about exchanging valuable experiences or things of value so you can play Fortnite and then go to another video game and continue the valuable experience and then come back to Fortnite and do that kind of thing. So you're saying there might be a way to do that and to basically create standards the way the web has different standards. for displaying websites and all this kind of stuff, or the communication that's required on the networking side. So all the different standards that make the web work, there need to be those kinds of standards. Like what would those standards look like to enable the metaverse?
We need a lot of different things. The one area where the standards bodies have been very successful in creating working standards implemented by all of the major engines today is in low-level file formats for data interchange.
Hmm.
The web has PNG files for 2D images, and MP3 files for audio. And 3D has the Pixar USD file format, the Universal Scene Description, which is a description of the scene graph, the entire set of objects in the scene and all of their parameters, so that any engine that supports those features could import that and then render the same scene as the engine they came from. You know, large parts of this work across Unreal Engine and Unity and Blender and all of these 3D packages of different sorts. Then there's the GLTF texture format, which stores textures and geometry and other low-level data for 3D objects. When you see a Fortnite character, that file format, together with the image file formats, can store their static appearance, their the shape of their body, even their animations, and their different poses, and the appearance of them. The different standard file formats could store all of the sounds they make and their emotes, but we're still missing a bunch of pieces. The biggest missing piece is a programming language that's at the center of standardizing the metaverse. Now, if you look at the web is a combination of a bunch of different technologies. The two biggest ones are HTML, which describes the 2D scene graph, or the 2D layout of controls and objects on the web page. But that's just static data. It's just a non-moving, non-animating web page. And then you have the JavaScript programming language, which is used to manipulate that, to display things to the user, and to implement anything you could implement in code. So it's a little programming language that runs in your web browser. And the metaverse needs something that performs that similar role. But the metaverse and 3D gaming in general needs something that's rather more powerful, more safe, more scalable, and more capable than JavaScript. Because the metaverse is actually a more difficult technical problem than a web page. A web page, like an app, is just a single bundle of code and content that a company, has prepared, and they release it, and it stays exactly what it is until they release a new version, and it's upgraded from version to version as it goes. But the metaverse needs to be a composite of code and content built by millions of different people that could potentially form a seamless world together.
Yeah, it's fully distributed, collaborative. First of all, also the amount of data. I mean, it doesn't have to be that way, but websites are showing very little information. The metaverse, even when it looks like something like Fortnite, just the amount of information that's conveyed in the scene graph as the individual players are collaborating is a huge, huge, huge amount.
Yeah, the highest detail of Fortnite updates amount to about 60 gigabytes of data. And, that's just a small part of what exists in the Fortnite creative economy. And if you look at what this might be in a decade, as standards emerge, you might have exabytes of data out there. Fortnite Battle Royale is, I don't think, the ultimate manifestation of gameplay that will, ever be invented. What we've seen time and time again is that as we gain more technical capabilities, graphics gets more capable, CPUs become more performant, web services become ever more scalable. We see new genres of games that emerge that weren't possible before. And, Doom ushered in the era of deathmatch, the first time 3D multiplayer game was even possible at all. The early Battle Royale games, starting about 10 years or 15 years ago, only became possible back then. You couldn't have built one 20 years ago because you just couldn't have rendered an environment that's as large as a VR game with that many players, with that level of interaction and performance. It was just not possible to run it. So you got a certain level of technical capabilities, and a genre came out that proved to be by far the best shooter genre ever invented. But I think there are numerous, numerous more genres, some of which are better than any of the existing ones that will be invented as we get more and more capabilities. Some of the capabilities we're lacking now are the ability to build environments and game simulations that span more than work than a single company can possibly create. And, you see kind of the birth of that idea in Fortnite and Roblox, where there are tens of thousands of creators each building content, and users are playing meaningful amounts of it all. And so there's an ecosystem that's scaled larger than company. But it's still very much you go into one island and you play that creator's work. The other direction of its scalability is putting more and more of people's work together in a seamless, continuous play space if for games where that makes sense. You can imagine a game taking place in an environment that's the size of a continent or Earth, in which you can go from place to place and then see different areas which are maintained by different people. As you go into different spaces, the game rules are customized according to that, and you can go from experience to experience. And instead of having just one company's authorship ever present wherever you are, you'd be driving a car built by one person, carrying weapons built by 20 other people, and, taking place in a simulation in an environment that's built by thousands of other people, and working for separate companies or their own, entrepreneurs or indies or enthusiasts, all working together simultaneously. And like, we totally lack the programming foundations for that. Uh, the kinds of code you would need to write now are to make that happen are just not practical. And so we're investing massively in building new programming language technologies around Verse and our proposed standards for future metaverse programming that we hope will solve those kinds of problems and make that kind of world possible.
So first of all, that's a super exciting future where, it's not hundreds or thousands, it's millions of creators that can just create different small or big elements of a world as big as Earth. Just if you sort of close your eyes and imagine that world, that's really exciting. Where it's not a centralized company controlling the release of a particular island or so on. It's people constantly dynamically modifying all the islands of reality in this digital world. So, if you could speak to some of the technology that can enable that, you mentioned the verse programming language. First of all, also, how legit is it for you, CEO of Epic Games, to be a co-author? The programming language theorists are losing their mind. So, co-author on a paper that's describing some of the sort of nuanced details of a programming language. So, maybe you could speak to this programming language called Verse. It's a functional logic language. What is it? What are some cool features of Verse?
Verse is a programming language that we're building for large scale simulation programming. It's designed to make it easy to write code that can scale up to uh, not only you building a Fortnite island, but you building modules or components that can be used by millions of other programmers and coexist in a huge environment, and also can scale up to a huge scale simulation. Some games will be small. Battle Royale might find that, the 100 players is actually optimal. It might be the 1,000-player version of Battle Royale would be worse, but I bet there are 1,000, million, and tens of million player experiences. They're even better than that will yet to be discovered. And so,
Wait a minute. Tens of millions of players together.
sure, we've had Fortnite events that have attracted 15 million concurrent users, but the fact that they're all divided up into servers with 100 players each for those events isn't really a positive. It's just a limitation of the technology. Tracing back to Unreal Engine 1 and its single-threading decisions. If we could build a concert where all of the concert participants, potentially tens of millions of them, could participate together simultaneously and see that there's that massive a crowd and they could all do interesting things and interact with each other, that would be way cooler.
Just if we just sorry, I'm just loading it in. Just imagining together in one scene graph, 10 million people interacting. What a cool world that is.
Sure. Well, 10 million people, you have less than 10 million pixels on your screen. So what does the Nyquist sampling theorem say? It says that you don't need full overhead for every player. You need to render the players you're around you and some approximation of everything
Yeah,
else.
Tim, but there's also a networking component. Like
Yeah,
you're speaking to the rendering, but like, oh boy.
there's a lot of work that has to happen there. But, this is what we do
uh,
for a living. We solve hard
I
problems.
understand.
Because if they were easy, then other people could have solved them already.
That's really cool though. Just sort of the possibility, the vision of that is really cool. Even just, even 100,000 people or like bring 10,000 together just to, I mean, There's a reason in the physical world when you go to a concert and you have all those people around you, that energy, or you go to a football game, that energy is unlike anything else. And if you can bring that energy to the digital world, that's amazing.